So you typed how to bleed a furnace into the search bar, and you're probably standing in a house that's getting colder by the hour. Here's the first thing to know because it saves you from doing the wrong job entirely. Bleeding a furnace is actually two completely different tasks, and which one you need depends entirely on what kind of heat you have. On an oil furnace, bleeding means pushing trapped air out of the fuel line so oil can reach the burner, and it'll actually fire. On a hot water system with baseboards or radiators, bleeding means letting air out of the pipes so the hot water can circulate and your rooms warm up. Those are not the same procedure, and doing one when you needed the other gets you nowhere. So before you touch anything, let's figure out which machine you're looking at. If warm air normally blows out of vents in your floors or walls and there are no radiators anywhere, you have a forced air furnace. If that furnace runs on natural gas or electricity, good news, there's nothing to bleed at all. And your problem is something else. If it runs on heating oil with a fuel tank sitting in the basement, then you bleed the fuel pump, and that's the section coming up first. If instead you have baseboard units or radiators along your exterior walls, usually tucked under the windows, you have a hot water system, and you'll want the second half of this video. Most people searching this phrase have the oil situation, so let's start there. Here's the classic scenario. It's the coldest night of the year, the tank runs dry without you noticing, you get a delivery or pour in a few gallons yourself, and the furnace still refuses to start. That's not a coincidence, and it's not broken. When the tank runs empty, the pump sucks air into the fuel line, loses its prime, and now there's an air bubble corking the path between your oil and the burner. Bleeding pushes that air out. You'll also need to do this after changing an oil filter, or anytime the burner sputters and quits like it's gasping. One quick check before you grab tools. If your system has two oil lines running to the burner, a supply and a return, it's a two-pipe setup, and those almost always bleed themselves through the return line. If a two-pipe furnace won't run, the problem is usually somewhere else and you can skip ahead. A single line means a single pipe system and those trap air and have to be bled by hand. That's the one we're walking through. Grab a few things first. You want a 3/8-inch box end or tubing wrench, not pliers and not an adjustable wrench, because the bleeder fitting is soft brass and rounds off if you crank on it wrong. You also want a short piece of 1/4-inch clear rubber tubing, a glass jar or old can to catch the oil, and some rags, because this is a messy little job. It's smart to have a new oil filter on hand too, and I'll explain why in a minute. Now find the bleeder valve. It lives on the fuel pump, which is mounted on the side of the burner where the oil line connects, usually right near the oil filter canister. You're looking for a small hex fitting with a little nipple sticking out, and it generally points down at about the 4 or 8 o'clock position. Beckett and Suntech pumps both have one, and Riello burners have their own bleeder too, so whatever brand is bolted to your furnace, the fitting is there. Here's the actual procedure. First, make sure there's genuinely oil in the tank because bleeding a dry tank accomplishes nothing. Slip your clear tubing over the bleeder nipple and run the other end down into the jar. Take your wrench and crack the bleeder valve open about half a turn counterclockwise. Now press the burner reset button one time and the pump will kick on and start pulling fuel. Watch the tube closely. You'll get a hiss and some spitting first, air mixed with foamy, bubbly oil, and then it clears into a steady stream of solid clean oil with no bubbles. The moment that stream runs clean and steady, close the bleeder valve back up clockwise while the pump is still running, snug but not gorilla tight. The burner should catch and settle into a normal flame. Wipe up your spills and you're done. Now the single most important warning in this entire video, and the reason most people make things worse instead of better. Press that reset button only once. I know the temptation when it doesn't light is to keep mashing it, but every single press sprays another shot of raw oil into a combustion chamber that isn't igniting. Stack up enough unburned oil down there, and the next time it does light, you get a puffback, which is a delayed little explosion that blows soot through your entire house and can genuinely hurt you. So resetting it 10 times in a row isn't persistence, it's how a free, no-heat fix turns into a $1,000 soot cleanup. Press it exactly one single time. If it locks out a second time, most setups let you try the reset one more time to finish pulling the air, but that's your limit. If 2 tries don't give you clean oil and a steady flame, stop and call a technician. One more thing once it's running. After the tank ran dry, replace that oil filter because every oil tech whose write-ups I went through circled straight back to that same step. An empty tank stirs up all the sediment that normally sits quietly at the bottom, and that gunk heads straight for your filter and nozzle. A filter runs about $20 to $40, and swapping it now saves you a repeat failure in a week. If you'd rather not deal with any of this, a service call to bleed and restart usually runs somewhere between $75 and $200. That covers the oil side, so now to the other kind of bleeding entirely. If you've got baseboard heaters or radiators and one room or one whole floor has gone cold while the rest of the house is fine, you've probably got air trapped in the loop. It usually shows up upstairs because air rises and collects at the high points of the system where it corks the flow of hot water. You might hear gurgling or trickling in the pipes too. This also happens after the system's been drained and refilled for any kind of repair. Start by turning the boiler or the thermostat off and letting the water cool down. This matters because bleeding a hot system can spray scalding water at you. While it cools, find the bleeder valves. There's usually one at the end of each baseboard unit or up at the top of each radiator, and it's a small coin slot screw or a little square nut you turn with a flat screwdriver or a radiator key. Some nicer systems have automatic bleeders or one central purge valve, but most have the manual kind. The process is simple and you repeat it at every unit. Hold a cup or a rag underneath, then open the valve slowly counterclockwise. You'll hear air hiss out. Keep it open until the hissing stops and you get a steady dribble of water with no sputtering, then close it back up. Work your way through every radiator or baseboard in the house, generally starting with the one closest to the boiler and moving outward, or working from the lowest floor up to the highest. When you've hit them all, go check the pressure gauge on the boiler. Cold, it should read somewhere around 12 to 15 psi. Bleeding can drop that pressure, so if it's low, use the feed valve to bring it back up, then go re-bleed any unit that's still sputtering. So that's the whole job. Figure out which kind of heat you have, then either purge the air from the oil line at the pump or purge it from the baseboards. For most of you with the oil furnace, you'll know within a couple of minutes of cracking that bleeder whether you've solved it because the burner either catches and holds a flame or it doesn't. If it catches, you're warm tonight and you only need to swap that filter to stay that way. If you've bled it properly, there's oil in the tank and it still won't fire on your second and final reset. That's your signal to stop guessing. At that point, the fault is deeper. A bad pump, a clogged filter, or an air leak sneaking into the suction line, and that's a job for a pro. I've left the wrench, the clear tubing, and the right oil filter linked in the description so you're not standing at the hardware store guessing at sizes. Now go get it lit.